afternoon. It's never easy to speak in the afternoon after a long day of speeches, but since this is a budget conference, I presume you're used to it. So, good afternoon, everyone. Very nice to be here. Let me begin by thanking you, dear Commissioner, dear Piotr, Serafin, for bringing us together today. It was truly a pleasure to welcome you to the Conference of Presidents in Strasbourg earlier this month, a clear sign of the close cooperation between the European Commission and this Parliament. And this conference could not come at a more important time. Earlier this month, as you've heard from my colleagues, we adopted our position on the next long-term EU budget, and in the next few weeks the Commission will present its proposal, and what we discuss today will shape, as we see, the decisions that follow. When we designed, if we go back to any similar conference that would have taken place exactly 7 years ago, when we designed the current EU budget back in 2018 and 2019, the discussions were completely different. It was a completely, really different world. The word COVID had yet to enter our vocabulary. Russia hadn't launched its invasion of Ukraine. There was no energy crisis. Interest rates were near zero. Inflation was stable. And global supply chains were strong. That feels like a complete lifetime ago. And yet, the budget that we agreed in that moment is still the one we are working with today. It has been stretched, it's been adapted, it's been revised, but it was, first of all, never built for the scale or the pace of the challenges that we face. Now, the fact that our union managed to respond, to vaccinate millions, to support Ukraine, to protect jobs, to stabilize energy markets, this is a testament to the resilience of our institutions, to our leadership and our collective resolve. That much is clear. But it also showed us one thing, that our next EU budget cannot be business as usual. It absolutely needs to be more strategic, it needs to be more responsible, and it needs to be more flexible. That is why we took the decision in the European Parliament to act early. When Europeans voted last June, and whoever of us ran for a seat in this very difficult Parliament today, we all agree on one thing, that we received the clearest of messages of what citizens want from us. First of all, they want a Europe that works. They want a Europe that makes their lives simpler, not harder. They voted for less red tape. They voted for faster decisions. And they voted for institutions that deliver. Now, simplification has been on our agenda, has been the promise for years, but for too many that promise is still to be delivered. Second, they voted for a Europe that should provide. That should provide good jobs, better infrastructure, and a fair chance to start a business, to buy a home, to build a future. And parents across Europe want their children to have better lives than they did. And third, they want a Europe that protects, where borders and values are defended, and where people feel safe in their homes and on their streets. They want the peace of mind that we collectively can stand up for ourselves. I don't think that's too much to ask. I can't tell my voters that that's too much to ask. So what happens now is that it falls up to us to build that smarter, stronger and safer Europe. And how do we do that? We do that by delivering the budget needed to get there. At its very basic, that's what we have to do. So earlier this month, we adopted a position on the next long-term budget because the scale of the task ahead demands speed, it demands direction, and it demands, above all, clarity. And our approach is built on three principles. Number one, the next budget must be strategic. Every euro must support our priorities, whether that's security, whether that is competitiveness. That means investing in critical technologies, clean energy, infrastructure, research, innovation, and yes, our defense. If we want Europe to lead in AI, in new medicines, or in space, we can't do it with yesterday's tools or yesterday's thinking. Out of 14 new emerging technologies, we're only competitive today in 4. And that's a reality, quite stark, but we need to say it, and we need to see how we're going to meet the targets that we have, to give the confidence that we need to give to our younger generation that is waiting to grow up in a more prosperous Europe that makes it life easier with more opportunities for them. Investing in our security and our competitiveness also means backing the sectors that keep our union resilient. When we support our farmers, we strengthen our food security. When we invest in our regions, we fuel innovation, cohesion and long-term growth. When we invest in our young people, we don't just support the next generation, but we lift the whole of Europe up. Second, the next MFF must be responsible. And that means facing up to the cost of next generation EU, so that we don't indebt the next generations. Under the current plan, 1 in 5 euros of the next MFF will go towards repaying debt, which of course we need to do, but that needs to take everything into consideration. And that is why this Parliament continues to call for a fair and lasting solution and for new own resources to repay that debt without undermining our priorities, because without new income streams, that becomes harder to do. This is about paying our dues and funding our shared priorities, because budget discipline and delivery go hand in hand. Responsibility also means accountability. EU funds must never be misused, and access must depend on respect for our values and the rule of law. Also something that was not very, let's say, boldly featuring when we last negotiated the MFF. But if there's one thing, I've been a member of the European Parliament for 11 years, is that year on year, this becomes a much bigger priority. We're not talking about just one member state or 2 member states. We're talking a systemic regression of how funds are used and the lack of transparency. No access by national parliaments to how they are used, no ex post assessment on how funds are delivered, no assessment also on where funds are recalled, and no assessment on audits. That we see it on a national level. We get it on our desks when we're faced with annual rule of law checks, and this could be something that is inbuilt in any structure that we have for the next how many years we decide this next budget to be responsible for. Number 3, the next budget must be flexible. Now, I just mentioned a little bit of what happened over the past 5 years, of war, a pandemic, cost of living crisis, natural disasters. We find ourselves in September, October, having to very creatively look how we're going to address urgent requests from our governments for help, urgent financial help for something that was not budgeted, not predicted, and unprecedented. Flexibility, we believe, can no longer be a backup plan, but must be part of the plan in the way going forward. I don't think we have a choice, because if a crisis hits halfway through a budget cycle, then we cannot be left without the means to act. And we look at the world around us, the world is frankly changing too fast for a static budget to hold us back. Now, of course, being flexible should not mean, lest I be misunderstood, collapsing everything into one pot. So, yes, 52 separate programs is too many. Yes, we need to simplify, but not by pitting farmers against researchers, regions against startups. That's not simplification. We must streamline where we can, we must modernize where we must, but we also need to protect what works. If we want a budget that reflects what Europeans voted for, then this is our responsibility as parliamentarians we need to be able to fully do our job as co-legislator, as budgetary authority, as the institution that holds the executive to account. It's not about procedure, it's about democratic legitimacy. Because after all, we're spending taxpayers' money, so the people must have a say about how we spend it. And I think it's only fair that we are open and accountable and transparent when we do it. Something that I would like to address directly as I come to a close. We have self-reflected quite a lot as a Parliament. We have realized that some of our procedures, the way we work, were not as fast, as agile, as efficient, as effective as 2024 then and 2025 now needs. So just as the world has radically changed since 2018, so has this Parliament. So we have reformed, we're much faster now, we're more decisive, we're more effective. If you see how quickly we acted on the European Defence Industry Programme for defence procurement, so EDIP, the stop the clock mechanism, the urgency and the vote took place within days. That is something that we can show those voters in June who perhaps didn't vote or looked at the Parliament as being just another part of many cogs in Brussels, are perhaps going to be able to change their mind when they see how we act today. So if we see that the world has changed since the last MFF, so has our union. We have grown strong, notwithstanding how difficult it was. We have managed to be unanimous when I thought we would never manage to be unanimous. We have found majorities in the Parliament that I thought would never be possible in such a diverse Parliament. But that also proves that we have adapted to the urgencies we're faced with. That also means that we've listened to those who have trusted us with the seat that we hold. That shows that we have stepped up. So now we must match that strength with a budget that is fit for the next decade, strategic in what it prioritizes, responsible in how it spends, and flexible in how it responds, because what's at stake is not just another 7-year plan, but our ability to lead, to protect, and to deliver. Europeans are ultimately not asking for the impossible. They are asking for a union that works. They are asking for a union that provides. They are asking for a union that protects. I think we can safely say that we will work to deliver that union with a budget that puts people's priorities first, and we can do that together. Thank you very much.